The first panel was about impact. And when we talk to impact, when we talk about impact, we talk about environmental but also social impacts. And among social impacts, diversity and inclusion topics are among the key concerns, as, for example, Candice mentioned at the beginning of the panel. Yesterday, at the Women in Private Equity cocktail that I participated in, there was also the summit at between 5 and 6. I hope that you were all here. It was really interesting, and I heard some sentences that I would like to share with you. So, diversity and inclusion are a driver for value creation and for efficiency. If you're not fully convinced about that, we can take a look at diversity from another perspective. For example, from nature. If you look at the forest, strength, like global strength of the forest, comes from diversity. Diversity of species, but diversity of DNA within a species, and that's diversity which enables strength. So at Indefi, we've been helping our clients define their vision on D&I for several years now. And we would like to deep dive into this topic right now. So welcoming on stage Laura and Elena, Patricia, and Helen to talk about engaging with fund managers on diversity and inclusion.
Thank you. Hello and good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to see you all here today in Cannes. My name's Laura West. I'm Head of Membership at the BVCA, so the British Private Equity and Venture Capital Association, and I'm joined by some fantastic women working in the industry today. So I'd like to welcome Patricia Milazola from Neuberger Berman, Helen Steers of Pantheon, and Eleanor Layla of Klein Hill. So the subject of today, LPs agree that diversity matters, and research shows the positive impact of diverse management teams on and organisations on financial performance. At the BVCA, we promote diversity and inclusion within the industry. When we think about diversity, we want to promote people from all ethnicities, sexual orientation, socio-economic background, and gender. So we're going to have a bit of a deeper discussion on this. The BVCA partners with Level 20, which is a charity which supports and promotes women working within the private equity. And we have collated data and we produce reports on D&I. We're launching a survey in October with the aim to look at the stats and release this in time for Women's Day in March. Okay, so Pat, would you mind letting us know what actually are the expectations of GPs and of LPs, and how should GPs meet these expectations of their investors?
Thank you, Laura, for that question. So, so I'm at Neuberger Berman. We are investing. Last year, we invested in, just under 90 managers and committed about $3.5 billion to those 90 managers. And so, as I think about this question, and already this year we've committed to about 60 funds and over $2.5 billion. So we're very active in investing in funds. And one of the things we decided many years ago was that, and we saw this, the firms that had the best performance, the firms that had the best opportunities for us to partner with them long term were diverse firms. And so we codified it as part of our diligence. And so for every single one of those, 90 managers last year, we do what we call a diversity survey. And part of that is actually not just looking at where they are now. So we count, we count people, we count how much, what does their investment committee look like? What is their what does their senior team look like? What does their mid-level and junior team look like? But also, what are their views around diversity? Where are they now, and where do they want to go to? And that's an important piece of our analysis, because not only does it give us a statement about how they view it, but they will be coming back to market. Now they're coming back. Used to be every 4 or 5 years. Now it's every couple of years, and so you can actually see how close they've come to what they said they were going to do. And we hold them accountable. And so now when we look, we're evaluating a manager, and there's always the page that has the boxes with all the faces on it. When you look at one of those pages and all of the investment team members are male and white, that's a problem. And you really feel like these folks might be dinosaurs and really don't know that in order to make sure they are positioning themselves for the future, and they've got a workforce that's actually going to be able to create the value that LPs like us want, it needs to be diverse. So it is a very, very big topic for us.
That's great. Thank you. Helen, any thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Thanks for the introduction, and good morning, everybody. And I'm pleased we've got this opportunity today to talk about such an important topic. So similar to Pat, Pantheon has put a huge amount of emphasis on diversity and inclusion over the years. It's been incorporated into our due diligence questionnaires, into what we do on advisory boards, really importantly, to get it on the agenda for advisory boards and on annual meetings. And we are seeing progress on that. Now, why are we doing it? Well, of course, we're doing it because it's the right thing to do, to encourage better diversity and inclusion. But it's also because, as Pat has mentioned, we believe that the more diverse teams will produce better performance. And this is an industry which lives and dies by performance. And it doesn't make any sense to restrict your intake of the best people by gender or by ethnic diversity, socioeconomic background, or disability. So we believe that by casting the net wide, we will get the best people coming into the industry. They will put together more diverse groups of thinkers, and in that way, they will avoid groupthink, which is the worst possible thing in investment decision making. And you can't really get diverse decision making without a diverse group of people. It's not just about the investment decision making, though. It's also about the fund managers, the private equity managers, and how they appeal to management teams. And these days, management teams, look diverse. They look a lot more diverse than they used to, and therefore they don't want to see a group of people in front of them that come from one ethnic background and are all male, frankly. So to get the best management teams, to get the best opportunities, and to be able to make the best investment decisions, we believe that requires diversity. We can always, already see some changes, and we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit later, about sort of, progress in the industry. But fundamentally, it's about performance, and this industry lives on performance.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laura, for the introduction, and I fully agree what has been said. I think we already came a long way when it comes to diversity, but it's also a long path we have ahead of us. I think we also need to realize that we can't change things overnight. As a firm, you cannot just hire 10, 20 diverse people and you think they have a sense of belonging immediately. And I think we need to accept that it's going to be baby steps, and it's rather going to be authentic baby steps rather than wanting to change things overnight.
That's really insightful. Thank you. So in terms of the industry, is private equity raising the bar?
I do think there has been some progress. You mentioned Level 20 earlier, Laura, and clearly BVCA has got a great partnership with Level 20. So I co-founded Level 20 with 11 other women in 2015. And at that time, there were no figures about diversity in the industry. This is 7 years ago. It's only 7 years ago. There were no numbers. Nobody had ever counted the number of women in the industry, which is absolutely incredible. And as we all know, if you don't measure it, you don't manage it, okay? So one of the first things that we did when we founded Level 20 in 2015 was we tried to get numbers. And Invest Europe were helpful on sort of the pan-European basis, and we came up with an estimate of around 6% of senior investment positions were held by women. 6%, which is absolutely appalling. Worse than the hedge fund industry, which is saying something. So there has been progress. Level 20 has just actually produced the latest results of a survey, and that shows that, in fact, we're now sitting at about 10% across Europe. Now, the objective of Level 20 is to get to at least 20% of senior roles held by women. So we are making baby steps, as Elena said, but there has been progress. And that latest survey, if you haven't seen it, I encourage you to have a look at it, because it does show the progress at different stages in an organization. So although we're only at 10% in terms of senior investment roles, if you look right through the organizations at the junior level, there are many, many more women coming into the industry, which is fantastic. And if you look, different countries are doing better than others. I'm happy to say that France, actually, where we're currently sitting, is actually one of the better countries. So, in fact, the percentage of senior investment positions held by women in France is actually 15%. It's a little bit ahead of that 10% level. And I think France actually has about 42% of women in junior investment positions. So the pipeline is being built up. Level 20 is working very hard with the industry associations, with major GPs. Level 20 now has 106 sponsors. The majority of whom, vast majority, close to 100, are GP sponsors, and this includes some of the biggest GPs in the world, putting together a code of conduct, measuring, and then really importantly, putting in place processes and ways in which to encourage more women to come into the industry, promote those women, retain those women, so that we get towards a better balance. The mentoring program is particularly important, and that's really come along by sort of leaps and bounds. And important to say that it's not only senior women who are mentors, it's also senior men. And the feedback from the senior men is that they get actually as much out of the mentoring process as the junior women. So I think that's quite interesting.
Thank you, Helen. So, Pat, Helen's covered kind of gender diversity. What are you seeing in terms of ethnic diversity within private equity?
Yeah, I'd say that it is, there needs to be a lot of work there as well. I mean, one of the things that we've done in the business at Neuberger Berman is that emerging managers, we've been investing in now for more than 15 years. And emerging managers have generally been defined as managers that are small, that are newer, and that have diverse leadership, all toward this conversation we're having that the diverse leadership can create a compelling value proposition because you do have these individuals that are hungry, that have these niche specializations, and that have a different type of network, right, that they're going to be able to leverage for the portfolios. And we found that we want to have that, we wanted to build custom portfolios around some of that value proposition. So as we've looked at managers, and so we think about diversity in all its stripes, and as we've looked at the managers and invested in this space for this period of time, interestingly enough, especially for the portfolios that we manage, there are more ethnic diverse individuals than women, because most of what we're doing is kind of buyout and growth. And what we found is that the women-run funds that we've looked at, by and large, have been on the venture side. And so even though the numbers are still small, it's heartening to think when we look at some of the managers that we've been investing in for very long periods of time, many of those managers, the most successful ones, are led by diverse individuals. And so we talk about the Clear Lakes of the world, the Tomo Bravos of the world, the Francisco Partners of the world. And so these are all very large partnerships, and they're run by diverse individuals. And you can see many of those characteristics that, I talked about, the network, the hunger, and all of those things kind of leading to the success. So I think that in many ways on the private equity side, male ethnic diversity, we see it more than actually the women-run funds.
Yeah, I think the war for talent in our industry it's very competitive, especially for diverse talent. I think we've all probably experienced that, and we spoke a lot about gender diversity or ethnic diversity. But in the end, it all comes back to having like people with different opinions and different views to achieve in the end better returns, because you have diverse people thinking differently. So there's all sorts of diversity I think we should focus on. Also socioeconomic diversity or cognitive diversity, hiring people that have different backgrounds, have worked in accounting or like corporate development, or any kind of people that just bring in different perspectives to the table.
Brilliant, thank you. So what can we do to encourage kind of discussion and debate in the area in order to kind of drive change and promote diversity and inclusion? Helen?
So I think panels like this, obviously very good. I think we need to get the topic onto broad agendas, whether it's industry conferences, whether it's advisory boards, AGMs, as I've mentioned. I think it has to be a whole industry thing, which is why, I mentioned with Level 20, it's great that we've got the biggest GP sponsors right down to the mid-market and the venture guys as well involved. It has to be really espoused by LPs, because LPs hold the key to this. And if we as LPs ask the right questions and insist, as Pat mentioned earlier, including questions on diversity and inclusion in our questionnaires and the way that we hold our managers to account, I think that's good. And I think then we have to, not just talk the talk, we have to walk the walk too. And we have to provide, ourselves as role models in the industry. I think LPs need to show that they're also diverse and inclusive. And there are some good examples out there. I mean, my own firm, Pantheon, is very diverse in terms of both sort of gender, sexual orientation, ethnic diversity, socioeconomic. We've been measuring it for a long time in terms of our own gender diversity. So we have, we have actually over 40% of investment staff are female. And interestingly, over 43% of investment heads are female, which is very unusual in our industry. And 40% of the members of our International Investment Committee are female. And then on ethnic diversity, which we've been measuring as well for a while, we're about 35% non-white. And we're just starting to measure as well disability status. Socioeconomic status is somewhat harder. We do measure LGBTQ sort of sexual orientation as well.
I think Helen mentioned role models. I think firms have done very well on the hiring side. You have like two levers you can pull on, right? It's recruitment and retention, and especially like on entry levels, a lot of firms and us as well, we've done good jobs in bringing diversity in on entry levels. But the more tricky part is the retention part, and that probably also takes a little longer. And here, role models, I think, are very important. And the quota topic always comes with this as well, where a lot of people have different views. But role models was something throughout my career which I've missed a little bit. And where I'm trying to do a better job for like junior and mid-level people in my firm, but also at universities or even in schools. I think it's not just the PE industry that has to do something, but it's like the entire society. Like you sometimes you tell little girls already, like math is not for you, or finance. It's like a whole bigger thing. And I believe it already starts with the education of our children.
And Laura, I would say the way we push the agenda is we kind of recognize that, really to my former panelists' points, to their points, is that we all have to be a part of the change. We all can be a part of it, no matter what seat we are sitting in. We actually can impact this if we are intentional around it and kind of recognize that in our seats we can do something. I mean, one of the reasons why I'm encouraged around this topic around diversity like never before is that, I've been, in the finance industry now for more than 3 decades. And for the most part, everyone's talked about it for the whole time, right? There was never a time when people didn't, but it didn't feel to me that until now, you had this combination of carrot and stick. And I think certainly in private equity, folks are very much rational economic animals. And if you combine those two, because historically, there was really not much benefit to getting it right, and there was not much penalty if you didn't get it, if you were wrong either. And so now for the first time, it feels to me that, that not just all of society, but specifically LPs, specifically investment opportunities, for the groups that come to the table and they are diverse and they're showing that value proposition associated with it, they get larger allocations. I mean, and folks, want to partner with them. And so there's a real benefit to it. And then alternatively, to the point we're saying here, if you don't get it right, people will penalize you for it. When you come back for that next fundraise, you may not get as many LPs that want to invest in you if you haven't made real traction. So I love the fact that finally we're putting both of those things together, and there's no kind of hand-wringing if you don't get it right, because you know that, why, who cares? Because there's no penalty.
I thoroughly agree with what Pat said. That's really well said, Pat. And I just want to give a little anecdote, actually, something I thought was quite interesting. So, yes, we're selecting GPs, and diversity and inclusion is a big part of it now. And, we may decide to turn our backs on certain managers because we don't think they're going to deliver in the future if they don't have it right. They're not going to be fit for the future, just as if their strategy isn't right or they don't have, generally the right sort of organization. But interestingly, there is one fund that is fundraising at the moment in Europe, I won't name it, that is selecting its LPs on the basis of, do they have the right sort of ESG credentials and the right diversity and inclusion? And it's a very high-performing fund. So I thought that was actually quite interesting.
That's brilliant. That's hugely positive. And I suppose when we're thinking about driving change within the industry, it's good to celebrate kind of successes and small kind of wins, as it were. Do you have any kind of success stories that we could kind of build upon? Eleanor, anything?
Yeah, I think it goes back to what I mentioned before. I think we all doing already a good job and being role models to the more junior staff and trying to help there. And it all starts with recognizing that there is an issue and you want to change something. And we spoke about setting goals and policies, but in the end, those are just metrics, and it's how you live it. And like an anecdote also, a male colleague of mine, he was telling me, we were talking about diversity, and he was saying, how do you do this? You're an investment committee and there's 8 men sitting with you. I could never imagine being in a room with 8 women. And I was this is a funny comment, but it's great that he thinks about it, how I feel. And having already these discussions, I think it's great.
So maybe just a little bit of feedback from the Level 20 mentoring program, which I mentioned earlier. So we've been tracking the cohorts of mentees to see whether these women have ended up sort of staying in the industry, and they're tracking through. So after 5 years, it's a very high retention rate. It's something like 98% of those mentees have stayed in the industry. So I think that's really, really good. And 78% of those female mentees have made it to partner. So I think that's already, a success story. And then another little amusing anecdote from the mentoring program. So some of the male mentees, as I mentioned, male mentors, as I mentioned before, seem to have got quite a lot out of it. Have got an insight into the way that the sort of issues that women and I suppose minorities in general have in private equity firms. And one of them, again, who shall remain nameless, who has 4 daughters, said that that has made him a lot more sympathetic to the sort of issues that his daughters are facing in school and later on in university. Going back to Elena's point about it starts very early in schools and universities.
So luckily, there are lots of successes. And so I think about that question in 2 ways. One is when I look at our investment team. So it's really important, as Elena's saying, to make sure you're walking the walk and talking the talk, everything matches. And kind of 30%, a third of our senior investment professionals at Neuberger Berman and our private markets business are female. And so we think that that means that when we present ourselves to our clients as well as GPs, we reflect what we are suggesting to them. So that's part of it, and folks are homegrown. Everybody on the team has been there 10 plus years. But the other side of that, again, talking about this from the standpoint of being fiduciaries and really where are you getting the best risk reward performance? As I mentioned, we've been managing portfolios focused on diverse private equity firms now for more than 15 years. And one of the things that I'm proud of is that when we look at those portfolios that we've been managing over time, and we look at the vintage, we compare the vintage, the vintage returns of those portfolios to our broader platform that did not have a lens around diversity. They're some of the best performing portfolios on our platform. The managers that we've invested in that are diverse, they've been some of the best performing managers that we've invested in across our platform. And so it's saying to us that this really matters. And it doesn't just matter because it's the right thing to do, because it clearly is, but it matters because if you don't do it, you're not going to be delivering the best performance to our LPs. And now our LPs too know as well. So right now we've gone from managing, modest sized portfolios, $100, $200 million portfolios. And now we have more than $1 billion in active portfolios focused on investing in diverse managers. And so I think about, the whole evolution of that story, and to now be at a point where our LPs are recognizing that they really want to make sure they have these types of managers in their portfolios.
Excellent, thank you. It's hugely inspiring and reassuring. We're getting close to the end of the session, although I just wanted to ask one final question, if I may. We're living in a post-COVID world, and in this modern day in which we work, flexible working has become far more acceptable. How has this helped you kind of attract and retain diverse talent?
I think it's very important. Like 5-7 years ago, you didn't get that question if you can also work from home. Now in every interview and every rank is like, so what's your flexible work policy?
Yeah.
I think it's very important, and it gives flexibility to all kinds of people. It's not just for women, right? It's for men, for everyone. If you're taking care of like a mother or father, if you have children, or also if you're maybe more an introvert person and you prefer working from time to time at home, right? So I think it has helped a lot in the industry, and I don't think this will go away. And managers that are like very strict with like 5 days in the office, they will struggle to attract talent in general, and especially diverse talent.
No, I agree with that. And I think that, again, talking about role models, I mean, at Pantheon, and I mentioned we've got 40% of senior investment roles held by women, but the men have always been encouraged as well to, go to their children's events, and tell everybody, take your paternity leave, and tell everybody. And I think that this, your question, Laura, is a good one about the move to more flexible working. I think it's just going to embed more some of those behaviors and give people permission to do it, whereas before, they might have worried about doing it. So we've just got to make sure that we keep doing it. And, again, that'll help us attract the right people.
I end up being kind of eternally optimistic on these subjects, and you end up getting, things that occurred you would not know that is going to have the kind of impact. that it has. So I really believe that the flexibility that's afforded in in the workplace now in a post-COVID world is actually going to do more to retain women than ever before, because we've had a lot of women entering the workforce, but the challenge has been the retention. Once people, especially the women, took on more responsibilities on a personal level, it just became really unmanageable. And I think having the flexibility that the COVID has actually kind of created, being able to be home for a few days, I think is definitely going to create an opportunity for women to stay in the workforce a lot longer and to be able to manage the various responsibilities they have. But to to the other points, is that it's actually made life better for everybody. And I think men as well as women are now coming into the workforce a lot happier.
Excellent. I mean, I could go on talking about this all day, but I'm conscious of time. So thank you to all the panelists today. It's been a brilliant discussion, and thanks all for coming. If you'd like any more information on the topic, please do feel free to reach out to me, and I can speak about all things BVCA. Finally, I hope you walk away from this session feeling inspired to drive change and having some further insights into the topic. Thank you.